Ladies and gentlemen, over 13 million of you voted, though apparently less than 4 million of you will be in synagogue today. Some of you will leave feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and distant. But others will leave feeling refreshed, renewed, repentant. I'm Rabbi Ryan Jewcrest. Welcome, my friends, to American Jewish Idol. And here are our judges. First we have Randy Ruvain Jacksonburg.
Hey, what's up, Kelly? We gotta have one tonight! Yeah!
Next we have Paula Shaula Abdul.
You know, everyone's here tonight. It touches my heart. I'm sorry. It is just so touching. I love it. I love it.
And finally, the Haman of the American Idol world, Simon Shimon Kowski.
Really, Rabbi? What's past this first sermon these days? I can find that on any cruise ship in America.
American Idol is the most successful reality television show in the history of American television. It's been the top show running in ratings for the last 8 years. Clearly, it strikes a chord with the American people. I find myself watching it every year despite its many faults. And maybe it's the advertising man in me, the career I had before I entered the rabbinate. But I believe that there are always lessons that can be learned from popular culture. And today, I want to explore 2 of them with you, both of which are rooted in problems that Judaism has been dealing with for centuries. The first of these is idolatry, the very name of the show. The American Idol television show opening presents an image of like a golden or a silver statue, people turned into statues, precisely the kind of thing that the Jewish tradition so detests. I mean, it's all over the Torah. The second of the 10 commandments, thou shalt have no other gods before me, thou shalt not make a graven image or a sculpted image. And it's not just in the second commandment. The subject of idolatry and its many punishments is all over the Torah. Many of the 613 commandments are devoted to idolatry. And not just the law, but the lore, the stories. In the book of Exodus, the sin of the golden calf, where the people and Aaron lead them into throwing in their gold to building this idol while they're impatiently waiting for Moses to come down from the mountain. This is a sin considered so egregious by the rabbinic sages that in Exodus Rabbah, the Midrash, they declare that all the ills which have befallen the Jewish people since that time are traceable to the golden calf. You also have Abraham smashing his father's idols, which is a story that's so popular, people think that it's in the Torah, when in fact it's a later rabbinic commentary, Genesis Rabbah. Some of the gods that are mentioned, Molech, Baal, Baal Peor, Asherah. And it's not just about clay statues or golden figurines. Idolatry is associated in the Torah with debauchery, with the worship of human beings, with cult prostitutes, even with human sacrifice. The sin of idolatry is considered so serious that the rabbinic sages claim in the Talmud that the primary reason the first temple was destroyed was because of the sin of idolatry. Still, we understand this, but not a whole lot of us have clay figurines and golden statuettes in our houses that we're bowing down to. It can be challenging enough to worship a more mystical, higher power sort of God, let alone a statue. But I think if we look a little harder, we'll find that idolatry is not just an ancient problem, but a modern problem as well. The rabbinic sages of the Talmud understood this. They identified idolatry with the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and they particularly associated it with anger and temper. Tractate Shabbat says that one who loses his temper it is as if he has worshipped idols. They saw anger as equivalent to a foreign god that had to be eradicated, but it was so difficult to get rid of. There's a wonderful story from the Hasidic tradition that illustrates this, about the Vishnitzer Rebbe. It seemed that the Vishnitzer Rebbe and his disciples were baking matzah for Passover, and one of them noticed that another had done something that could possibly render it chametz. And so he became very angry at his fellow student, and he yelled at him, "What are you doing?" So the Vishnitzer Rebbe pulled him aside and said, "My son, why are you becoming so angry with your friend?" And the student said, "Well, Rebbe, the smallest amount of chametz, the smallest quantity, is prohibited on Pesach." To which the Rebbe replied, "Yes, but the smallest quantity of anger is worse than the smallest quantity of chametz." No, idolatry is not just about bowing down to some ancient statue. When we allow our anger to consume us, that is a form of idolatry. When we allow our pursuit of material wealth to overshadow everything else we do in life, that is a form of idolatry. When we become so absorbed in our work that we begin to neglect our families, our friends, that is a form of idolatry. When we come to believe that our bodies are literally temples to such an extent that our society has become obsessed with weight and body image, that there are members who can't even function, that is a form of idolatry. When we come to exaggerate the importance of certain commandments over others, so it becomes more important how an animal is slaughtered than how we treat the workers doing the slaughtering, that is a form of idolatry. When we worship at the altar of our own egos, believing that we have all the answers, that is a form of idolatry. When we worship at the altars of narcissism and self-fulfillment, so that our own happiness comes at the expense of taking care of the broader needs of our society, that is a form of idolatry. And when we worship the ground that celebrities walk on, athletes, entertainers, singers, to the point where we forget what is really important in life, that too is a form of idolatry. Which brings us back to the television show. American Idol, other reality shows, they're wonderful guilty pleasures if we leave them there. But the problem is we don't. People have become so hungry for their 15 minutes of fame that they will do anything to get on television. They'll let cameras follow them around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll try to survive on an island for months at a time. They'll make up stories about their children flying off in hot air balloons. When this is what we've come to, we know that we have a real problem, a modern problem with idolatry. So that's lesson number one that we can learn from the television reality show, American Idol. Lesson number two has to do with how we give and receive criticism. A lesson that can be learned from watching the behavior of the judges on the show. When I watch the show, I watch it almost exclusively pre-recorded on the DVR. That way it takes me only 15 or 20 minutes instead of an hour. And what I do is I'll watch the performance, and I'll stick with it if it's good. If not, I'll fast forward. And then I'll immediately fast forward to the British judge, Simon Cowell, to see what he has to say. Simon's comments are brutally honest, with emphasis on the brutal. He can be sarcastic, cruel, and downright mean. He's also usually insightful and accurate and spot on. And I almost always learn something from what he has to say. By contrast, Paula Abdul, when she was on the show, her comments were loving and compassionate and caring. But I usually learn very little from them. And the thing is, as a rabbi, I love the kindness and compassion evident in Paula's words, and I detest the cruelty evident in Simon's. But if we're honest with ourselves, we know that we learn far more from the Simons of the world, usually, than we do from the Paulas. And this is a lesson not just about singing competitions, but also about life. In Leviticus chapter 19, verse 7, it says, "You shall not hate your neighbor in your heart, but you shall reprove him." or her, and yet you shall incur no guilt because of him. And from this passage, the rabbinic sages derive a commandment, a mitzvah, called hokeach tochiach, which says that we are obligated to reprove or criticize our neighbor in order to make them a better person, but we have to do so without embarrassing them or humiliating them or shaming them in any way. And this is a very difficult thing to do. It's a very fine line. Here are some of the comments from the rabbinic sages. Genesis Rabbah says that love, unaccompanied by criticism, is not love. Tractate Yevamot, Rabbi Tarfon said that, I wonder if there is anyone in our generation who knows how to accept criticism or reproof. To which Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah responded, I wonder if there is anyone in our generation who knows how to reprove or criticize. And Tractate Yevamot, just as one is commanded to say that which will be heeded, one is commanded not to say that which will not be heeded. Clearly, learning how to critique or reprove someone lovingly is a very difficult task, and most of us need to improve our skills in this area. The same thing, by the way, goes with self-criticism, which in many ways is what these Yamim Noraim, these 10 high holy days between Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur are all about. We must examine our own deeds. On Yom Kippur, next week we're going to read the Al Chet, where we're going to beat our fist against our hearts. We're going to confess our sins, Al Chet shechatanu lefanecha, for the sin that we've committed against you, willingly or unwillingly. And then we're going to go through a list of sins from Aleph to Taf, the whole alphabet of all the things that we've done. And what we have to realize is that these are not just ancient categories that the rabbis made up for themselves. They're about us. They're about the things that we continue to do. At the same time, we have to realize that, we're all human. And if we're not yet the spouse or the parent or the colleague or the friend or the citizen or the Jew or the person that we wish to be, that's okay. But only by examining our deeds and letting others comment on our deeds can we hope to become that person, or at least put us firmly on that path. One final Hasidic story, a very famous one, about Reb Zusia of Hanipol. Reb Zusia of Hanipol was getting older, and he was outside his synagogue with his face buried in his hands in great sadness, and one of his students chanced upon him. And he said, Reb Zusia, why are you so distraught? And Reb Zusia said, my son, I'm getting older, and soon I will meet the throne of heavenly judgment, and I'm afraid. And the student said, but Rebbe, what do you have to be afraid of? You're one of the greatest Rebbes of our generation. You're a wonderful teacher and a scholar and a kind, compassionate human being. You're there for everybody. Anyone who has a question for you, anyone who is sick or is in need, you're there. You donate to charity. I mean, there are people who compare you to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses, our teacher. And Reb Zusia said, that's exactly why I'm so afraid. Because when I get to the heavenly throne of judgment, I'm not going to be asked, why were you not more like Moses? I'm going to be asked, why were you not more like Zusia? My friends, learning to critique ourselves, learning to lovingly and healthily both give and accept criticism, and understanding that idolatry is not just about bowing down to some ancient statue. These are the lessons that we can learn from the popular reality show, American Idol. The question is, who among us will heed these lessons? Who among us will apply them to our lives? We'll find out after the break. Jewcrest.